Welcome to Wonderful Stories, a place where imagination comes alive. So let's begin.
Part 1. The idol he was supposed to hate. The screams were deafening. They weren't human anymore. They were something else. Something primal. Something devoted. Kaiser. 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 Under the blinding white stage lights, Kang Yoon-seok stood at the center of it all. Leader of Kaiser. The nation's pride. The untouchable idol. His chest rose and fell heavily as the final notes of their performance faded into the massive arena. Sweat ran down his neck, disappearing beneath the collar of his expensive black stage outfit, custom made to make him look less like a person and more like a weapon. He smiled, not because he felt like it, because he had to, because that was his job, because 10,000 fans had paid to believe that smile was real. "Thank you," he shouted into the mic, his deep voice echoing across the venue. The crowd exploded. Lightsticks shook like stars in a storm. He waved. Perfect, controlled, untouchable. But inside, he felt nothing. Backstage, the moment the cameras cut, his smile disappeared. "Just like always. You did amazing, Hung," one of his members said, clapping his shoulder. Yoon-seok nodded. He was used to praise. It meant nothing anymore. His manager rushed toward them, phone in hand. "Great job. Social media is exploding. You're trending #1 worldwide." Of course they were. They always were, because Kaiser had only one rival, and that rival had performed on the stage across town tonight. Vortex. Just the name made his jaw tighten. Their fans hated each other. Their companies hated each other. The media loved comparing them. Everything was a competition. Album sales, awards, views, popularity, even breathing. And at the center of Vortex was Lee Seo-jin. Yoon-seok had never spoken to him. Not once. But he knew his face. Everyone did. Silver blonde hair, sharp eyes, a voice that could make entire arenas cry. He was dangerous, because he was the only idol who stood on the same level as Kang Yoon-seok. And tonight, their comeback dates had overlapped, which meant war. Across the city, in another arena just as loud. Seo-jin, Seo-jin, Seo-jin. Lee Seo-jin stood under falling confetti, his pale hair glowing under the lights like something unreal. He breathed in slowly. He could hear his heartbeat over the noise. This was his world, his prison, his everything. He smiled at the fans. Soft, gentle, perfect, because that was what they loved, what they needed, what they owned. "Thank you for loving us," he said quietly. The crowd screamed louder. They would never know how tired he was. Backstage, his members hugged him. "You were insane out there. You saw the crowd. They lost their minds." His manager approached. "You're trending #2. Seo-jin blinked. "2. The manager hesitated. "Kaiser is #1. Of course." Seo-jin looked down. He wasn't surprised. It was always Kaiser. Kang Yoon-seok. The golden boy. The idol who never made mistakes. The idol who never showed weakness. The idol Seo-jin had watched from afar for 3 years. Not with hatred, with curiosity, and something he didn't want to name. 3 days later, Music Bank. The battlefield. Both groups were nominated for first place. Backstage, the air was thick with tension. Fans filled the audience, half holding Kaiser's light sticks, half holding Vortex's. They looked like opposing armies. Yoon-seok stood in front of the mirror, fixing his in-ear monitor. His expression was calm, always controlled, until the door opened. He looked up, and froze. Lee Seo-jin had just walked in. For a moment, the world stopped. Seo-jin bowed politely. "Hello." His voice was soft, respectful, professional. Yoon-seok stared at him. This was the first time he had seen him this close. He was more beautiful in person. It was annoying, dangerous, unfair. "Hello," Yoon-seok replied. Their eyes met, and something unfamiliar passed between them. Not hatred, not rivalry, something else, something quiet, something alive. Seo-jin smiled faintly, and walked past him. Their shoulders brushed, just barely, but it felt like electricity. Yoon-seok's breath caught. He didn't understand why. Seo-jin didn't look back, but his fingers trembled slightly. Neither of them noticed the camera at the corner. Neither of them noticed the fans watching. Neither of them knew. This was the beginning of everything. On stage, both groups stood side by side, waiting. The MC smiled brightly. "And the winner of this week's Music Bank is..." The screen flashed. The numbers calculated. The tension was unbearable. Yoon-seok didn't breathe. Seo-jin didn't move. "And the winner is..." Pause. "Kaiser." The arena exploded. Cheers, screams, victory. Yoon-seok stepped forward automatically. This was normal. This was routine. This was expected. He gave his speech. Perfect. Flawless. But as he bowed, his eyes moved, and found Seo Jin. He was clapping, smiling, but his eyes, they looked lonely. For the first time, Kang Yoon-seok felt something twist painfully in his chest. He didn't know why, he didn't know what it meant. He only knew, he couldn't look away, and Lee Seo Jin was looking right back at him. Not like a rival, not like an enemy, like someone who understood, and that was far more dangerous. Part 2. The moment they were caught looking at each other. It happened faster than either of them expected, and slower than either of them could survive. The video went viral overnight. It was only 7 seconds long. 7 seconds that would change everything. Grainy backstage footage, two idols passing each other. Shoulders brushing, eyes meeting, lingering, too long, too soft, too dangerous. The caption read, "Why are they looking at each other like that?" By morning, it had millions of views. By afternoon, it had millions of opinions. By evening, it was a scandal. Yoon-seok stared at his phone in silence. His manager was yelling, "This is a problem." His company director looked furious. "You will avoid him." His manager nodded. No eye contact, no interaction, nothing. Yoon-seok said nothing. His eyes stayed on the paused frame. Lee Seo Jin, looking at him, not like a rival, not like an enemy, like something fragile. His chest tightened. "Yoon-seok," the director warned, "do you understand?" "Yes." Lie. Across the city, Seo Jin sat in another room just as silent. His manager looked pale. "You need to be careful." His company wasn't angry. They were afraid, because fans were unpredictable, and fans were already fighting online. Kaiser fans, he's trying to get attention using Yoon-seok. Vortex fans, Yoon-seok is the one staring first. Others, are they rivals or lovers? Seo Jin's fingers curled slightly. "I understand." Lie. Days passed, schedules overlapped, but they never spoke. Not in public, not in private, not at all. Until Inkigeo, another music show, another stage, another war. Backstage hallways were crowded, staff everywhere, idols everywhere, cameras everywhere. Seo Jin walked carefully, eyes down. Professional, controlled, safe. Then, he saw him, standing alone near the emergency exit. Kang Yoon-seok. His black hair was damp. His stage makeup slightly smudged. He looked tired, human. Seo Jin's steps slowed. He should walk past. He should ignore him. He should pretend he didn't exist. That was what everyone wanted. What everyone expected. What everyone demanded. But, Yoon-seok looked up. Their eyes met, and everything fell apart. For a moment, neither moved. Neither breathed. Neither spoke. Seo Jin's heart pounded. He bowed quickly. Hello. Formal. Distant. Safe. He turned to leave. Wait. Seo Jin froze. That voice. Low. Careful. Dangerous. He turned back. Yoon-seok was looking at him. Not like an idol. Like a person. "Are you okay?" Yoon-seok asked quietly. Seo Jin blinked. "What?" Yoon-seok hesitated. The comments. Seo Jin's chest tightened. He shouldn't care. He shouldn't notice. He shouldn't ask. "I'm fine." Lie. Yoon-seok stared at him. Like he knew it was a lie. "You don't have to be." Seo Jin's breath caught. No one had ever said that to him before. Not his company. Not his members. Not anyone. Because idols weren't allowed to be anything else. Strong. Perfect. Untouchable. But Kang Yoon-seok was looking at him like he was allowed to break. Seo Jin looked away. "We shouldn't talk." Yoon-seok didn't move. "I know." But he didn't leave. Neither did Seo Jin. Silence filled the space between them. Heavy. Fragile. Alive. "Why did you become an idol?" Yoon-seok asked suddenly. Seo Jin looked at him, surprised. "Why?" Yoon-seok shrugged slightly. "I was curious." Seo Jin thought for a moment. "Because it was the only thing I was good at. Honest. Too honest." Yoon-seok nodded slowly. "Me too." They both smiled. Small. Sad. Real. Footsteps approached. Staff voices. Reality returning. Seo Jin stepped back. Distance. Safety. Lie. "We shouldn't get caught," Seo Jin whispered. Yoon-seok nodded, but his eyes stayed on him. Seo Jin. It was the first time he said his name. Seo Jin's heart stopped. "Yes." Yoon-seok hesitated. "Be careful." Seo Jin swallowed. "You too." And then, he left. Before he could stay. Before he could fall. Before he could do something he would never recover from. That night, Seo Jin lay in his dorm bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. His heart raced. He opened it. A message. Just 3 words. "Did you eat?" Seo Jin stared at it. His fingers trembled. He knew who it was. He shouldn't reply. He couldn't reply. He wanted to reply. He typed. Deleted. Typed again. Deleted again. Finally. Yes. 3 letters. 1 lie. His phone buzzed instantly. That's good. Seo Jin smiled. Small. Real. Dangerous. Across the city, Yoon-seok stared at his phone. At that single word, yes, it felt like victory. It felt like hope. It felt like the beginning of something that would destroy them both. But for the first time in years, Kang Yoon-seok felt alive. Neither of them knew. Someone had seen them talking. Someone had taken photos. Someone was waiting for the right moment to ruin everything. Part 3. The secret messages they should never have sent. The first message was a mistake. The second was a choice. Everything after that was inevitable. Did you eat? Seo Jin stared at those 3 words again. It had been 2 days since he replied. 2 days since he had stared at his phone like it held his entire future. 2 days since he realized something terrifying. He was waiting. Waiting for another message. Waiting for him. His phone buzzed. His heart stopped. Unknown number. You did well today. Seo Jin's fingers froze. He hadn't told him about today's recording. He hadn't told anyone how nervous he was. And yet, he knew. Seo Jin typed slowly. You watched it. The reply came instantly. I always do. Seo Jin's breath caught. Always. Not sometimes. Not when he had time. Always. His chest felt too tight. You shouldn't. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I know. Another pause. But I want to. Seo Jin closed his eyes. That was the problem. He wanted to. Days turned into weeks. The messages never stopped. They became routine. Dangerous. Necessary. Did you sleep? You look tired today. Don't skip meals. Are you okay? No one had ever cared like this. Not without wanting something in return. But Yoon-seok never asked for anything. Except Seo Jin. Seo Jin. He looked up. His group member Minho was watching him carefully. You're smiling at your phone a lot these days. Seo Jin froze. Am I? Minho smirked. Are you dating? Seo Jin's heart slammed against his ribs. No. Too fast. Too defensive. Too obvious. Minho laughed. Relax. I'm joking. But Seo Jin didn't relax. Because it wasn't a joke. Not really. Across the city, Yoon-seok lay in his dorm bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone rested on his chest. Their messages open. He read them again, and again, and again. He didn't understand when it started. When Seo Jin stopped being his rival. When he became this. Something softer. Something more. His phone buzzed. Seo Jin. Are you still awake? Yoon-seok smiled. Yes. 3 dots. Stopped. Started again. Seo Jin. I can't sleep. Yoon-seok sat up. Concern immediately replacing everything else. Why? Pause. Long. Heavy. Seo Jin. I don't know. Lie. Yoon-seok stared at those words. He wanted to ask. He wanted to fix it. He wanted to be there. But he couldn't. He wasn't allowed. He typed anyway. Do you want to talk? The reply came slowly, carefully. Seo Jin. Yes. They didn't talk about important things. Not at first. They talked about stupid things. Favorite foods. Favorite songs. Things they hated. Things they missed. Things they lost. Seo Jin told him he missed walking outside alone. Yoon-seok told him he missed being unknown. Seo Jin told him he hated cameras. Yoon-seok told him he hated himself on screen. They laughed. Quietly. Softly. Freely. For the first time in years. They were just people. Not idols. Not rivals. Not enemies. Just Yoon-seok and Seo Jin. Weeks later. Award show rehearsal. Both groups. Same stage. Same air. Same danger. Seo Jin stood at center stage, adjusting his microphone. His heart was calm. Until he felt it. That familiar presence. He turned. Yoon-seok stood across the stage. Watching him. Not hiding it. Not pretending. Just watching. Seo Jin's breath caught. He looked away quickly. Staff everywhere. Cameras everywhere. But when he looked back, Yoon-seok was still looking at him. And this time, he smiled. Small. Secret. Only for him. Seo Jin's heart betrayed him. He smiled back. Just as small. Just as secret. Just as dangerous. That night, Seo Jin's phone buzzed. Yoon-seok. You smiled today. Seo Jin stared at the message. His fingers trembled. Seo Jin. So did you. Pause. Yoon-seok. Only because of you. Seo Jin's breath stopped. His chest hurt. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This was everything. Seo Jin. We shouldn't do this. The reply didn't come immediately. For the first time, Yoon-seok hesitated. When it came, it was only 4 words. I know. Another message followed, but I can't stop. Seo-jin closed his eyes. His heart answered before his mind could. Me neither. Neither of them realized. Someone else had seen the messages. Someone else had access. Someone else was watching, waiting, collecting, preparing. Because love was the perfect weapon. That night, Seo-jin fell asleep holding his phone. And across the city, Yoon-seok did the same. Both smiling, both falling, both doomed. Part 4. The night they met in secret. It was Seo-jin who suggested it. He didn't mean to. He shouldn't have. But some thoughts were too dangerous to keep inside forever. Seo-jin, do you ever go outside alone? Yoon-seok stared at the message. It was past midnight. The city outside his dorm was quiet. Lonely. Just like him. Yoon-seok. Number. Pause. Yoon-seok. I'm not allowed to. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Seo-jin. Me neither. Yoon-seok's chest tightened. He could picture him, curled in his bed, silver hair falling over his eyes. Looking small. Looking human. Looking breakable. Seo-jin. Sometimes I want to run away. Yoon-seok sat up. His fingers hovered over the screen. Yoon-seok. Where would you go? Long pause. Long enough to hurt. Seo-jin. Somewhere no one knows me. Yoon-seok's heart ached. Because he understood. Too well. He typed before he could stop himself. Yoon-seok. Let's go. The reply didn't come. Seconds passed. Then, Seo-jin. What? Yoon-seok swallowed. This was stupid. Reckless. Impossible. He sent it anyway. Yoon-seok. Just for a little while. Silence. His heart pounded. He shouldn't have said it. He was about to apologize when. Seo-jin. Okay. 2:17 a.m. The park was empty. Streetlights flickered. Cold air wrapped around everything. Yoon-seok stood near the entrance. Black hoodie. Black mask. Black cap. Hidden. Waiting. His heart hadn't stopped racing since he left the dorm. He felt insane. What was he doing? What if someone saw? What if someone found out? What if? Footsteps. Soft. Careful. He turned. And forgot how to breathe. Lee Seo-jin stood there. Silver hair hidden under a cap. Face half covered. Eyes wide. Nervous. Beautiful. Real. Not an idol. Just him. For a moment, they only stared. Taking each other in. Memorizing. Confirming. This wasn't a dream. Hi. Seo-jin whispered. Yoon-seok stepped closer. Hi. Their voices sounded different. Softer. Fragile. Seo-jin laughed quietly. I can't believe we're doing this. Neither could Yoon-seok. But he didn't regret it. Not even a little. They walked side by side. Slowly. Carefully. Not touching. Not yet. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Free. I used to come here before I debuted, Seo-jin said softly. Yoon-seok listened. I haven't been back since. His voice carried something heavy. Something lost. Yoon-seok looked at him. You can come back now. Seo-jin smiled sadly. Only like this. Hidden. Secret. Wrong. They stopped near a bench. Sat down. Close. Too close. Not close enough. Seo-jin looked at his hands. I thought you'd hate me. Yoon-seok blinked. Why? Seo-jin laughed weakly. Because everyone else does. Yoon-seok's chest tightened. I don't. Simple. Honest. True. Seo-jin looked at him. Really looked at him. Why? Yoon-seok didn't know. He only knew the truth. Because you look lonely. Seo-jin's breath caught. No one had ever said that. No one had ever seen him. Not like this. Not really. You too, Seo-jin whispered. Their eyes met. And held. And held. And held. Until Seo-jin's hand moved. Just slightly. Resting beside Yoon-seok's. Their fingers brushed. Electric. Neither pulled away. Neither moved. Neither breathed. Yoon-seok, Seo-jin whispered. It was the first time he said his name. It sounded different. Softer. More dangerous. Yes. Seo-jin hesitated. His fingers trembled. This is wrong. Yoon-seok knew. He didn't care. I know. But he didn't move away. Neither did Seo-jin. Their fingers intertwined. Slowly. Carefully. Like something sacred. Like something fragile. Like something they couldn't survive losing. Yoon-seok's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Seo-jin's hand was warm. Real. His. For this moment. Only this moment. Seo-jin looked at him. Eyes vulnerable. What are we doing? Yoon-seok answered honestly. Something we're not allowed to. Seo-jin laughed quietly. Tears filled his eyes. I don't want to stop. Yoon-seok's chest broke. Me neither. They sat there. Holding hands. Saying nothing. Feeling everything. For the first time since becoming idols. They were free. But freedom never lasted, not for people like them. Across the street, a camera flashed, hidden in the dark, watching, capturing, destroying. Neither of them knew. This night would cost them everything. Part 5. The photos that broke the internet. The photos were released at 9:03 a.m. At 9:04, their world ended. Yoon-seok didn't see it first. His manager did. The call came before he even woke up. Turn on your phone, right now. The voice sounded wrong, too tight, too controlled. Yoon-seok sat up slowly, heart already uneasy. What happened? Just look. The call ended. His hands felt cold as he opened social media. And then, he saw it. Photos. Clear. Undeniable. Two figures in a dark park. Sitting close. Hands intertwined. Faces visible. His face. Seo Jin's face. His heart stopped. The headline read, Kaiser's Kang Yoon-seok and Vortex's Lee Seo Jin caught on secret late-night date. His phone slipped in his hand. No, no, no. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. His door slammed open. His manager stood there, furious, terrified. Explain this. Yoon-seok couldn't speak, because there was nothing to explain. It was true. All of it. Across the city, Seo Jin stared at the same photos. His vision blurred. His chest felt like it was collapsing. His manager was shouting, "What were you thinking?" Seo Jin flinched. He had never seen him this angry. This isn't just a dating scandal. This is worse, worse. Because it was him. Because it was another man. Because it was his rival. Because fans would never forgive this. His hands shook. I'm sorry. It was the only thing he could say. The internet exploded. Kaiser fans. He betrayed us. Vortex fans. He used Seo Jin. Others. This is disgusting. This has to be fake. They're ruining their careers. Millions of comments. Millions of opinions. Millions of people who thought they owned them. Who thought they had the right to decide who they loved. Yoon-seok sat in the company conference room. Executives surrounded him, cold, distant, disappointed. You will deny it. His director's voice was absolute. Yoon-seok looked up. What? You will say it was a coincidence. His jaw tightened. But it wasn't. Silence fell. Dangerous. His director's eyes hardened. You don't have a choice. But Yoon-seok did. He always did, even if it destroyed him. Seo Jin sat in another room, facing the same conversation, the same orders, the same demands. You will apologize to fans. His manager's voice was firm. You will say you were meeting as colleagues. Colleagues. The word felt like a lie. And if I don't, his manager stared at him. You won't have a career anymore. Seo Jin's chest hurt, because he knew it was true. Hours passed. Statements were prepared. Lies were written. Their phones were taken. Their freedom was gone. Again. Yoon-seok sat alone in his dorm. For the first time, he couldn't contact Seo Jin. He didn't know if he was okay. He didn't know if he was crying. He didn't know if he hated him. His chest felt like it was being torn apart. Because this was his fault. He had asked him to come. He had held his hand. He had fallen first. Across the city, Seo Jin cried silently into his pillow. Not because he regretted it, but because it was over. Before it even had a chance to begin. That night, their statements were released. Kaiser official statement. Kang Yoon-seok and Lee Seo Jin met by coincidence. They are not in a relationship. Vortex official statement. They are simply colleagues. Colleagues. Strangers. Nothing. Lies. Fans argued. Some believed it, some didn't. But one thing was certain. Everything had changed. Days later, music show recording. Both groups attended. But this time, they didn't look at each other. Didn't speak. Didn't exist. They stood on the same stage. Miles apart. Worlds apart. Yoon-seok kept his eyes forward. Because if he looked, he wouldn't survive it. Seo Jin kept his head down. Because if he looked, he would break. But for 1 second, just one, Seo Jin glanced up, and saw him, and Yoon-seok saw him too. Pain passed between them, sharp, silent, final, because they both knew, they weren't allowed to love each other. But that didn't stop their hearts. And neither of them knew. This was only the beginning of the war. Part 6. The moment they were forced to pretend they were strangers. Pretending was part of their job. They pretended to be happy. Pretended to be strong. Pretended to belong to millions of people who didn't really know them. But this, pretending they meant nothing to each other, was the hardest role Kang Yoon-seok had ever played. 2 weeks after the scandal, they met again, not alone, never alone. The year's biggest award show. All idols attended, all cameras watching, all eyes waiting. Waiting for mistakes. Waiting for weakness. Waiting for proof. Backstage felt like a war zone. Managers hovered. Staff whispered. Everyone knew. Everyone pretended they didn't. Yoon-seok stood with his members, adjusting his cuffs. His face was calm, cold, perfect, but inside, he was breaking, because he knew Seo-jin was here. Somewhere, close, breathing the same air, suffering the same pain, and he couldn't even look at him. Seo-jin stood across the hallway. His silver hair was darker now, dyed black, his company's decision, to make him less noticeable, less controversial, less himself. He stared at the floor. His members talked around him. He didn't hear them, he only heard his heartbeat. Because he could feel him. Nearby, always nearby, he hated it, he needed it. Kaiser, you're up next. Yoon-seok nodded, professional, controlled, empty, as he walked toward the stage entrance. He saw him, Seo-jin, standing just meters away. For a moment, everything stopped. Their eyes met, and broke. Seo-jin looked away first. Like he didn't know him. Like he had never held his hand. Like he had never whispered his name in the dark. Yoon-seok's chest tightened. He forced himself to walk past him. Their shoulders brushed, just like the first time. But this time, Seo-jin stepped away, like he was afraid, like he was sorry, like he regretted everything. Yoon-seok felt something inside him shatter. On stage, Yoon-seok performed perfectly, every move precise, every expression flawless. Fans screamed his name, they loved him, they owned him, but he felt nothing. Because his eyes kept searching the crowd, and finding only one person, Lee Seo-jin, watching, not smiling, not breathing, just watching, like it hurt, like it meant something, like it meant everything. After the performance, backstage again, safe, hidden, broken, Yoon-seok stood alone near the dressing rooms. His hands trembled. He hated this, he hated pretending, he hated losing him. Footsteps approached, he turned, and froze. Seo-jin stood there, alone. Vulnerable, real. For a moment, neither spoke, neither moved, neither breathed. Hi, Seo-jin whispered. Yoon-seok's chest ached. He hadn't heard his voice in weeks. Hi, silence, heavy, dangerous. Seo-jin looked down. We shouldn't talk. The words sounded like knives. Yoon-seok swallowed. I know, but neither of them left. Seo-jin's fingers curled at his sides. They took my phone. Yoon-seok's heart dropped. Mine too. More silence, more pain. Seo-jin laughed weakly. I guess this is it. The end. The death of something they never even got to live. Yoon-seok didn't want to accept it. Are you okay? Seo-jin shook his head. Honest, broken, number. The truth hung between them. Raw, bleeding, real. Yoon-seok stepped closer. Careful, terrified. I miss you. Seo-jin's breath hitched. Tears filled his eyes instantly. Don't. His voice broke. Please don't say that. Because it made it harder. Because it made it real. Because it made him weak. Yoon-seok's hands trembled. I can't pretend you meant nothing. Seo-jin covered his mouth. Silent sob escaping. We don't have a choice. Choice. The word tasted like poison. Because they did have a choice. They just couldn't afford it. Voices approached. Staff. Managers. Reality. Seo-jin stepped back quickly. Distance. Safety. Lie. Goodbye. Yoon-seok. Goodbye. Not see you later. Not stay safe. Goodbye. Final. Permanent. Dead. Yoon-seok couldn't breathe. Seo-jin. But he was already gone. Walking away. Leaving him behind. Just like the world wanted. That night, Yoon-seok sat alone in the dark. For the first time, he cried. Not as an idol. Not as Kaiser. But as Kang Yoon-seok. A man who fell in love. And lost. Across the city, Seo-jin did the same. Holding the memory of a hand he wasn't allowed to touch anymore. But neither of them knew. The worst was yet to come. Because someone was about to give them a choice. And it would cost them everything. Part 7. The ultimatum, him or your career. The ultimatum came on a Monday morning. Cold, clean, merciless. Sit down. Yoon-seok already knew it wasn't going to be good. His director never sounded like that unless something was about to be destroyed. He sat. The conference room felt like a courtroom. And he was already guilty. His director slid a folder across the table. Open it. Yoon-seok did. His stomach dropped. Photos. Not just from the park. New ones. Backstage. Moments when they stood too close. Moments when they looked at each other too long. Moments no one else was supposed to notice. But someone had. Someone always did. His hands clenched. Where did you get these? His director's voice was emotionless. That doesn't matter. It did, but not as much as what came next. You have two options. Yoon-seok looked up. Option 1, his director said calmly, you end this. Completely. End this. Like it was nothing. Like Seo-jin was nothing. You will ignore him, avoid him, forget him. Each word felt like a blade. And option 2, silence. Then, we release everything. Yoon-seok's blood ran cold. Everything. Not just dating. Not just scandal. Destruction. Career. Reputation. Life. Gone. You'll be removed from Kaiser, his director continued. You'll lose endorsements, contracts, fans, everything he had built, everything he was. Why? His voice sounded small, human. His director looked at him. Because idols don't belong to themselves. They belong to the company. To the fans. To the world. Just not to themselves. Yoon-seok stared at the photos again. At Seo-jin's face. Soft. Trusting. He felt sick. Take the day to think, his director said. But Yoon-seok already knew. This wasn't a choice. It was a sacrifice. Across the city, Seo-jin sat in the same kind of room. Facing the same kind of execution. His manager didn't look angry. He looked sad. Which was worse? They want you to issue a statement. Seo-jin said nothing. You'll deny everything again. Silence. And, his manager hesitated. Seo-jin's chest tightened. And what? You'll publicly distance yourself from him. The words echoed. Distance. Like he hadn't already been forced to. You'll ignore him on camera. Avoid interaction. No eye contact. Seo-jin laughed weakly. Isn't that what I've been doing? His manager didn't smile. This time, it has to be real. Real. Permanent. Final. Seo-jin's fingers trembled. And if I don't? His manager looked at him. Painfully honest. You won't be in Vortex anymore. Seo-jin stopped breathing. Vortex was his life. His family. His dream. Everything. You're asking me to choose. His manager didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. That night, Yoon-seok stood on his dorm balcony. The city stretched endlessly below him. Beautiful. Lonely. He thought about his members. Their laughter. Their trust. He thought about his fans. Their love. Their faith. He thought about his career. Everything he had sacrificed to build it. And then, he thought about Seo-jin. His smile. His voice. His hand in his. His heart broke. Because he knew what he had to do. Across the city, Seo-jin sat on his bedroom floor. Photos spread around him. Memories. Proof. Love. Pain. He cried silently. Because he knew too. He knew there was no future for them. Not in this world. Not like this. 2 days later, award show rehearsal. They stood on the same stage again. Like always. Like nothing had changed. Like everything hadn't. Yoon-seok saw him. Seo-jin saw him. Their eyes met. And this time, Yoon-seok looked away. First, Seo-jin froze. Because he understood. That was his answer. And it broke him. After rehearsal, Seo-jin stood alone backstage. Trying not to cry. Trying not to collapse. Footsteps approached. He turned. Yoon-seok stood there. For the last time. Hi. Seo-jin whispered. His voice was already breaking. Yoon-seok couldn't look at him. Hi. Silence. Death. Seo-jin forced himself to smile. I understand. Yoon-seok's hands trembled. I'm sorry. Seo-jin shook his head. Tears falling anyway. Don't be. Because this was how it was always going to end. They both knew it. They were just stupid enough to hope. Goodbye, Seo-jin. Goodbye. Again. Final. Yoon-seok turned. And walked away. He didn't look back. Because if he did, he wouldn't survive it. Seo-jin collapsed after he left. Silent. Destroyed. Alone. That night, the companies released new statements. Distance. Professionalism. Nothing more. Nothing less. The world believed it. Because the world wanted to. But love didn't disappear that easily. Part 8. The day Seo-jin disappeared. At first, no one noticed. Because idols were always disappearing. Behind schedules. Behind closed doors. Behind masks. But this time, Lee Seo-jin didn't come back. It started with a missed rehearsal. Where is Seo-jin? His manager frowned, dialing his number again. Straight to voicemail. Strange. Seo-jin was never late. Never careless. Never irresponsible. Because he was afraid of exactly this. Afraid of being replaced. Forgotten. Erased. Maybe he overslept, one of the members said. But his voice sounded uncertain. Because Seo-jin never overslept. Never. By noon, the company was panicking. His dorm was empty. His phone was off. His car was still parked downstairs. He was gone. Completely. Yoon-seok found out from the news. Vortex's Lee Seo-jin absent from scheduled activities due to health reasons. Health reasons. The lie was obvious. His heart dropped. Because he knew. He knew Seo-jin wouldn't miss schedules unless he couldn't continue. Unless he had broken. Unless Yoon-seok had broken him. His hands trembled. He reread the article again. And again. And again. No explanation. No timeline. No Seo-jin. Gone. Days passed. No updates. No sightings. No messages. Nothing. Fans began to worry. Speculate. Fight. He's sick. He's hiding. He's quitting. Yoon-seok couldn't breathe. Because he didn't know. And not knowing was worse than anything. He stopped sleeping. Stopped eating. Stopped living. His members noticed. You look terrible, one of them said quietly. Yoon-seok forced a smile. I'm fine. Lie. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He went to Seo-jin's dorm. He knew he shouldn't. He knew it was dangerous. He didn't care. He stood across the street. Looking up. Waiting. Hoping. Praying. But the windows stayed dark. Empty. Like Seo-jin was never there. Like he never existed. Like he was just a dream Yoon-seok wasn't allowed to keep. His chest hurt. Because he realized something terrifying. He might never see him again. Across the city, Seo-jin sat alone in a small apartment. Not his dorm. Not his home. Somewhere no one knew. Just like he had once wished. Somewhere he didn't exist. His phone stayed off. His curtains stayed closed. His world stayed silent. He stared at nothing. Feeling nothing. Because feeling hurt too much. He remembered everything. The park. The messages. The hand he held. The goodbye. He pressed his hands over his face. And cried. Because he wasn't strong enough. Not to lose him. Not to lose himself. Not to live like nothing had happened. His company called. He didn't answer. His members texted. He didn't reply. The world waited. He disappeared. Weeks later, Vortex performed without him. 5 members instead of 6. The empty space was obvious. Painful. Wrong. Fans cried. Members cried. But Seo-jin wasn't there. Yoon-seok watched the performance alone. Hidden in his dorm. His chest felt hollow. Because he knew. That empty space belonged to him too. Because he was the reason Seo-jin wasn't there. He turned off the screen. Unable to watch. Unable to breathe. Unable to forgive himself. That night, for the first time, Yoon-seok made a decision. Not as an idol. Not as Kaiser. But as a man. He grabbed his keys. And left. Because he needed to find him. Even if it destroyed everything. He didn't know where to go. He didn't know where to look. But he knew one thing. He wouldn't let Seo-jin disappear alone. And somewhere, in a small, silent apartment, Seo-jin stared at his phone. At a contact he couldn't delete. At a name he couldn't forget. Yoon-seok. His finger hovered over it. Trembling. Wanting. Breaking. Neither of them knew. They were only one choice away. From losing each other forever. Part 9. The night Yoon-seok chose love over everything. Kang Yoon-seok had spent his entire life obeying. Obeying his company. Obeying his fans. Obeying the version of himself the world demanded. But tonight, for the first time, he chose himself. He chose Seo-jin. It was past midnight when he found the address. He didn't know how long he had been searching. Hours. Days. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he was here. Standing in front of a small apartment building. Nothing like the luxury dorm Seo-jin used to live in. This place was quiet. Forgotten. Hidden. Just like him. Yoon-seok's hands trembled as he stood in front of the door. Unit 306. He stared at it, terrified. Because this door held everything. Hope. Rejection. Love. End. He knocked. Once. Silence. Twice. Still nothing. He was about to leave. When he heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Afraid. The door opened slightly. And there he was. Lee Seo-jin. He looked thinner. Paler. Fragile. Real. Alive. Seo-jin froze. His eyes widened. Yoon-seok. His voice broke on his name. Yoon-seok's chest tightened painfully. Because he sounded like he didn't believe it. Like he thought he was dreaming. Hi. Seo-jin stared at him. Not moving. Not breathing. What are you doing here? Yoon-seok swallowed. His heart was racing so fast he thought he might collapse. I came to see you. Honest. Simple. True. Seo-jin's eyes filled with tears instantly. You shouldn't have. But he didn't close the door. Yoon-seok stepped closer. I was worried. Seo-jin laughed weakly. Why? The question shattered him. Because Seo-jin really didn't know. Didn't believe. Didn't trust it anymore. Because I love you. Silence. Everything stopped. Seo-jin's breath caught. His tears fell. Don't. but his voice begged him to continue. Yoon-seok stepped closer. I tried to stop. Another step. I tried to forget. Another. I tried to live without you. Now they stood inches apart. And I can't. Seo-jin was shaking, crumbling, breaking. You chose your career. The accusation wasn't angry. It was broken. And it was true. Yoon-seok nodded slowly. I did. Seo-jin looked away, pain flashing across his face. Then why are you here? Yoon-seok answered with the only truth left. Because I'm choosing you now. Seo-jin stopped breathing. I don't care what happens. His voice trembled. I don't care if I lose everything. His hands shook. I don't care if the world hates me. His eyes filled with tears. I just don't want to lose you. Seo-jin broke. He started crying. Not quietly, not politely, but completely. Because this was everything he had wanted. Everything he had lost. Everything he thought he would never have again. You're too late, Seo-jin whispered. Yoon-seok's heart shattered, but Seo-jin stepped forward and grabbed his shirt, holding him, clinging to him, like he would disappear. You're too late to pretend you don't love me. Yoon-seok laughed through his tears. I know. Seo-jin hit his chest weakly. You idiot. Another hit. You selfish idiot. But he didn't let go. He couldn't. Yoon-seok wrapped his arms around him, holding him tightly. Finally. After everything. Finally. Seo-jin buried his face in his shoulder. I was so lonely. His voice broke. Yoon-seok held him tighter. I'm here now. Seo-jin shook his head. They'll destroy you. Yoon-seok didn't care. Let them. Seo-jin pulled back, looking at him, terrified. Are you sure? Yoon-seok answered without hesitation. Yes, because loving him was the only thing that had ever felt real. Seo-jin cried again, but this time, he smiled. Small, fragile, hopeful. Yoon-seok reached up, wiped his tears gently. You're not alone anymore. Seo-jin leaned into his touch, trusting him again, choosing him again. Despite everything, despite the world, they stood there, holding each other, knowing tomorrow would destroy them. But tonight, they were just two people in love. And outside, someone was watching, someone was recording, someone was about to make sure. They paid for it. Part 10. The day the world found out the truth. The truth was exposed at 8:42 a.m. Not by them, not by their companies, but by someone who wanted to watch them burn. Yoon-seok's phone rang endlessly. He was still in Seo-jin's apartment. Still holding him, still pretending the world couldn't reach them here. Seo-jin stirred beside him. Your phone. Yoon-seok didn't want to answer. He already knew. He could feel it. That familiar dread. That familiar end. But he picked it up anyway. His manager's voice was shaking. Turn on the TV. The call ended. Seo-jin looked at him. Afraid. Yoon-seok grabbed the remote. Turned it on. And saw everything. Photos. Videos. From last night. Him entering the building. Him knocking on the door. Him holding Seo-jin. Clear. Undeniable. Unforgivable. The headline read, Rival Idols. Secret relationship confirmed. Exclusive footage. Seo-jin covered his mouth. His body trembling. They found us. Yoon-seok felt strangely calm. Because this was it. The end of hiding. The end of pretending. The end of running. His phone buzzed again. Messages. Hundreds. Thousands. His company. His members. Unknown numbers. Fans. Hate. Love. Everything. Seo-jin whispered. I'm sorry. Yoon-seok turned to him. No. He reached for his hand. This isn't your fault. But Seo-jin's eyes were breaking. You'll lose everything. Yoon-seok smiled sadly. Not everything. Because he still had him. For now. By noon, both companies released emergency statements. We are investigating the situation. Investigating. Like love was a crime. Like they were criminals. Fans protested. Some burned merchandise. Some defended them. Some cried. Some hated them. The world divided. Violently. Yoon-seok was ordered back to the company immediately. Seo-jin too. Separate cars. Separate buildings. Separate executions. Before he left, they stood at the door, looking at each other, memorizing, because they didn't know if they would ever have this again. Do you regret it? Seo-jin asked softly. Yoon-seok didn't hesitate. No. Seo-jin's eyes filled with tears. Me neither. Yoon-seok leaned forward, rested his forehead against Seo-jin's. One last moment. One last truth. I love you. Seo-jin whispered back. I love you too. And then, they let go. The company was chaos. Executives shouting. Managers arguing. Careers collapsing. His director looked furious. You lied to us. Yoon-seok said nothing. You disobeyed us. Silence. You destroyed everything. Yoon-seok looked at him. and spoke calmly. No. The room froze. His director's eyes darkened. What? Yoon-seok's voice didn't shake. You did. Because they were the ones who made love impossible. The ones who made it forbidden. The ones who made it something to be ashamed of. I won't apologize. Gasps filled the room. His director slammed the table. You don't have a choice. But this time, Yoon-seok did. He stood, removed the ring he always wore, the symbol of Kaiser, and placed it on the table. I quit. Silence. Absolute. Complete. Shock. His director stared at him. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Yoon-seok smiled faintly. No. He thought about Seo-jin. His smile. His tears. His love. This is the first choice I've ever made. And he walked out. Across the city, Seo-jin faced the same war. The same anger. The same demands. You will apologize. He didn't. You will deny it. He couldn't. You will end it. He wouldn't. I love him. The words fell into the room like a bomb. His manager stared at him. Broken. Seo-jin. But Seo-jin stood, crying, shaking, free. I'm sorry. He bowed deeply. To everyone. His voice broke. But I can't lie anymore. He left. Leaving Vortex behind. Leaving his old life behind. Leaving everything, except him. That night, the world watched in shock. Two top idols, two rival kings, gone, by choice, for love. And for the first time, they belonged only to themselves. Epilogue. When rivals fall, they finally become free. 1 year later, the world had moved on. Mostly. Scandals faded, new idols debuted, new rivalries formed, new stories replaced theirs, but some people never forgot. Yoon-seok stood in a small studio. Not as Kaiser, not as an idol, just as himself. He recorded music, not for fame, not for charts, but because he loved it. Because it was his. Because it was real. A voice called from behind him. You're working too hard. He turned, and smiled. Lee Seo-jin stood there. His hair silver again, his eyes brighter, healthier, free. Yoon-seok walked to him, wrapped his arms around him. Comfortable, natural, home. You came. Seo-jin laughed softly. You asked me to. Yoon-seok kissed his forehead. Gentle, unhidden, unashamed. Outside, no cameras waited, no managers watched, no one controlled them. Seo-jin rested his head on his shoulder. Do you miss it? Yoon-seok thought about it. The stage, the lights, the fans, the life he lost. Sometimes, he answered honestly. Seo-jin nodded. Me too. Silence. Peaceful. Complete. But I don't regret it. Seo-jin smiled. Me neither. Because they had lost everything. And gained something more important. Each other. That night, they walked through the city. Not hiding, not running, just walking. Together. Like normal people. Like they were always meant to. Seo-jin intertwined their fingers. Just like the first night. But this time, no cameras flashed. No one tore them apart. No one stopped them. Yoon-seok squeezed his hand. And smiled. Because when rivals fall, they don't fall alone. They fall into each other. And finally, they become free. Epilogue. When rivals fall, they finally become free. 1 year later, spring returned quietly. Not with the violent screams of stadium crowds. Not with flashing cameras or airport chaos. But with sunlight slipping gently through a studio window. Kang Yoon-seok stood alone in the recording booth. No stage name. No in-ear monitors connected to millions. No manager watching through the glass with expectations in his eyes. Just him. And his voice. He closed his eyes as the music played. It wasn't the kind of song Kaiser would have released. It was softer, raw, honest. The kind of song idols weren't allowed to sing. Because it told the truth. He sang the last note, his voice trembling slightly, and the room fell silent. For a moment, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, clap, clap, clap. Yoon-seok opened his eyes. And smiled. Lee Seo-jin leaned against the doorway, clapping slowly, his lips curved in that familiar soft smile Yoon-seok thought he might never see again. His silver hair caught the sunlight. Not styled, not perfected, just natural, just him. You've gotten better, Seo-jin said. Yoon-seok laughed quietly. You always say that, because it's always true. There was no distance between them now. No cameras forcing them apart. No companies reminding them of their place. Seo-jin walked inside the booth. Close enough that Yoon-seok could see the faint scar near his eyebrow, the one he got years ago during a choreography accident. Close enough to touch, and this time, he did. Yoon-seok reached out and brushed his fingers against Seo-jin's cheek. Soft, careful, real. You came early, Yoon-seok said. Seo-jin shrugged. I missed you. Simple, honest, free. Yoon-seok pulled him into his arms. And Seo-jin melted against him like he belonged there. Because he did. They stayed like that for a long time. Not speaking, just existing, just breathing, just being two people who had lost everything. And found something more important. Each other. Their life wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. They weren't famous anymore. Not like before. They couldn't walk into luxury brand buildings and have executives bow. They didn't have stylists choosing their clothes. They didn't have fans waiting outside their homes. Instead, they had normal jobs. Yoon-seok produced music for smaller artists. Seo-jin taught dance at a local studio. Sometimes, students would look at him strangely. Like they recognized him, like they remembered, but no one said anything. Because time had softened their scandal into a memory. A story. A what if, not a war. One evening, they sat on the floor of their apartment. Not a dorm, not company housing. Their apartment, small, warm. The walls were covered in little things. Photos, Polaroids, memories they were finally allowed to keep. One photo showed them at the beach. Seo-jin laughing as waves hit his legs. Another showed Yoon-seok asleep on the couch, mouth slightly open, Seo-jin's hand visible in the corner of the frame. Proof of happiness. Seo-jin rested his head on Yoon-seok's shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we didn't get caught? Yoon-seok thought about it. Sometimes he imagined it. Secret meetings, hidden messages, love that lived in shadows. But he shook his head. No. Seo-jin looked up. Why? Yoon-seok smiled softly. Because we'd still be hiding. And he never wanted to hide again. Seo-jin was quiet. Then he smiled too. I like this better. So did Yoon-seok, even if it cost them everything. Sometimes, they still watched their old performances. Not out of regret, but remembrance. One night, Seo-jin found an old Kaiser concert video. The crowd screamed Yoon-seok's name. He looked untouchable, unbreakable, perfect. Seo-jin glanced at the real Yoon-seok beside him. Wearing an oversized sweater, hair messy, head resting on Seo-jin's lap. Human, do you miss being loved like that? Seo-jin asked quietly. Yoon-seok didn't answer immediately. He thought about the fans. The cheers, the feeling of being needed. Sometimes, he admitted. Seo-jin's fingers stilled in his hair. I'm sorry. Yoon-seok sat up quickly. No, he cupped Seo-jin's face. Firm, certain. I was loved like that because they saw an idol. He brushed his thumb under Seo-jin's eye. But you love me, not Kaiser, not the image, him, and that's enough. Seo-jin's eyes filled with tears. Not sad ones, the kind that came from being chosen. Again, and again, and again. Summer came, hot, bright, alive. They walked outside freely, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just walking close enough that their shoulders touched. No one screamed, no one chased them, they were invisible, and for the first time in their lives, they loved it. One day, they passed a huge billboard. A new idol group, young, beautiful, perfect. Fans gathered below, screaming, crying, dreaming. Seo-jin stopped walking. Yoon-seok noticed. Are you okay? Seo-jin nodded. Just thinking. About what? Seo-jin smiled faintly. That used to be us. Yoon-seok followed his gaze. Yeah. Silence. Not painful. Just honest. Seo-jin intertwined their fingers. Do you regret choosing me? The question was quiet. Fragile. Afraid. Yoon-seok stopped walking. He turned. Pulled Seo-jin closer. And kissed his forehead. Slow. Certain. Full of everything he couldn't put into words. I would choose you. He kissed his cheek. In every life. He kissed the corner of his mouth. Every time, Seo-jin's breath caught. In every ending, Seo-jin smiled. And kissed him back. Right there. In the open. In the sunlight. Unhidden. Unashamed. Free. Years ago, they were rivals. Enemies. Two kings forced to stand on opposite sides. Now, they stood side by side. Not above anyone. Not below anyone. Just equal. Just human. Just in love. That night, they lay in bed together. City lights glowing through the window. Seo-jin rested against his chest. Listening to his heartbeat. We lost a lot. Yoon-seok nodded. We did. But, Seo-jin traced small circles on his arm. We didn't lose each other. Yoon-seok held him tighter. No, never again. Outside, the world kept moving. New idols debuted. New scandals replaced old ones. New rivals rose and fell. But their story didn't belong to the world anymore. It belonged to them, and that was enough. Because when rivals fall, they don't fall into darkness. They fall into truth, into freedom, into love, and sometimes, if they're brave enough, They stay there. Together. Forever. Epilogue extended. When rivals fall, they finally become free. 1 year later, spring returned quietly, not with the violent screams of stadium crowds, not with flashing cameras or airport chaos, but with sunlight slipping gently through a studio window. Kang Yoon-seok stood alone in the recording booth. No stage name, no in-ear monitors connected to millions, no manager watching through the glass with expectations in his eyes. Just him, and his voice. He closed his eyes as the music played. It wasn't the kind of song Kaiser would have released. It was softer, raw, honest, the kind of song idols weren't allowed to sing. Because it told the truth. He sang the last note, his voice trembling slightly, and the room fell silent. For a moment, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, clap, clap, clap. Yoon-seok opened his eyes. And smiled. Lee Seo-jin leaned against the doorway, clapping slowly, his lips curved in that familiar soft smile Yoon-seok thought he might never see again. His silver hair caught the sunlight. Not styled, not perfected, just natural, just him. You've gotten better, Seo-jin said. Yoon-seok laughed quietly. You always say that, because it's always true. There was no distance between them now. No cameras forcing them apart. No companies reminding them of their place. Seo-jin walked inside the booth. Close enough that Yoon-seok could see the faint scar near his eyebrow, the one he got years ago during a choreography accident. Close enough to touch, and this time, he did. Yoon-seok reached out and brushed his fingers against Seo-jin's cheek. Soft, careful, real. You came early, Yoon-seok said. Seo-jin shrugged. I missed you. Simple, honest, free. Yoon-seok pulled him into his arms. And Seo-jin melted against him like he belonged there. Because he did. They stayed like that for a long time. Not speaking, just existing, just breathing, just being two people who had lost everything. And found something more important. Each other. Their life wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. They weren't famous anymore. Not like before. They couldn't walk into luxury brand buildings and have executives bow. They didn't have stylists choosing their clothes. They didn't have fans waiting outside their homes. Instead, they had normal jobs. Yoon-seok produced music for smaller artists. Seo-jin taught dance at a local studio. Sometimes, students would look at him strangely. Like they recognized him, like they remembered, but no one said anything. Because time had softened their scandal into a memory. A story. A what if, not a war. One evening, they sat on the floor of their apartment. Not a dorm, not company housing. Their apartment, small, warm. The walls were covered in little things. Photos, Polaroids, memories they were finally allowed to keep. One photo showed them at the beach. Seo-jin laughing as waves hit his legs. Another showed Yoon-seok asleep on the couch, mouth slightly open, Seo-jin's hand visible in the corner of the frame. Proof of happiness. Seo-jin rested his head on Yoon-seok's shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we didn't get caught? Yoon-seok thought about it. Sometimes he imagined it. Secret meetings, hidden messages, love that lived in shadows. But, he shook his head. No. Seo-jin looked up. Why? Yoon-seok smiled softly. Because we'd still be hiding. And he never wanted to hide again. Seo-jin was quiet. Then he smiled too. I like this better. So did Yoon-seok, even if it cost them everything. Sometimes, they still watched their old performances. Not out of regret, but remembrance. One night, Seo-jin found an old Kaiser concert video. The crowd screamed Yoon-seok's name. He looked untouchable, unbreakable, perfect. Seo-jin glanced at the real Yoon-seok beside him. Wearing an oversized sweater, hair messy, head resting on Seo-jin's lap. Human, do you miss being loved like that? Seo-jin asked quietly. Yoon-seok didn't answer immediately. He thought about the fans. The cheers, the feeling of being needed. Sometimes, he admitted. Seo-jin's fingers stilled in his hair. I'm sorry. Yoon-seok sat up quickly. No, he cupped Seo-jin's face. Firm, certain. I was loved like that because they saw an idol. He brushed his thumb under Seo-jin's eye. But you love me, not Kaiser, not the image, him, and that's enough. Seo-jin's eyes filled with tears. Not sad ones, the kind that came from being chosen. Again, and again, and again. Summer came, hot, bright, alive. They walked outside freely, sometimes holding hands, sometimes just walking close enough that their shoulders touched. No one screamed, no one chased them. They were invisible, and for the first time in their lives, they loved it. One day, they passed a huge billboard. A new idol group, young, beautiful, perfect. Fans gathered below. screaming, crying, dreaming. Seo Jin stopped walking. Yoon-seok noticed. Are you okay? Seo Jin nodded. Just thinking. About what? Seo Jin smiled faintly. That used to be us. Yoon-seok followed his gaze. Yeah. Silence. Not painful. Just honest. Seo Jin intertwined their fingers. Do you regret choosing me? The question was quiet, fragile, afraid. Yoon-seok stopped walking. He turned, pulled Seo Jin closer, and kissed his forehead, slow, certain, full of everything he couldn't put into words. I would choose you. He kissed his cheek. In every life, he kissed the corner of his mouth. Every time, Seo Jin's breath caught. In every ending, Seo Jin smiled, and kissed him back, right there, in the open, in the sunlight, unhidden, unashamed, free. Years ago, they were rivals, enemies, two kings forced to stand on opposite sides. Now, they stood side by side. Not above anyone, not below anyone, just equal, just human, just in love. That night, they lay in bed together. City lights glowing through the window. Seo Jin rested against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We lost a lot. Yoon-seok nodded. We did, but, Seo Jin traced small circles on his arm. We didn't lose each other. Yoon-seok held him tighter. No, never again. Outside, the world kept moving. New idols debuted. New scandals replaced old ones. New rivals rose and fell. But their story didn't belong to the world anymore. It belonged to them, and that was enough. Because when rivals fall, they don't fall into darkness. They fall into truth, into freedom, into love, and sometimes, if they're brave enough, they stay there, together, forever. The end. If you like the story, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications for more amazing stories.